The lionfish is a predatory venomous fish. This invasive species has made its home in the reefs of Belize. But this fish poses a serious threat. It can wipe out commercial species and species that are unique to Belize. To the human eyes, the red or brown stripes make this fish beautiful to look at, but its characteristics make it one of the most feared fish in the seas. It eats any and everything in sight, even other lionfish, with their stomachs expanding up to 30 times its normal size. It eats 30 juvenile fish in just 1 minute. Since 2008-2009, this fish has become a feared marine species because it poses a threat to the fishing and tourism industries.
And you cut open a lionfish and you're seeing biologically important species, commercially important species coming out of these stomachs, and you realize that the lionfish is able to eat a fish, more than half its body size. It's able to eat pounds of other types of fish, just voracious eaters. You realize, just some of the scope of the problems. Looking at the livelihood issue first, for a Belizean fisherman not to be able to catch fish, that would be, a disaster of epic proportion. We have about 15,000 Belizeans that are directly dependent on fishing and their beneficiaries. So that would be a catastrophe on its own in terms of not being able to catch finfish. And the reality is there because we've seen in other countries, in Bahamas, for instance, where native species have taken a serious toll on this because just not calculating how quickly the lionfish would have manifested its presence in our waters.
It creates an impact for the fishermen, for example, for their livelihoods, but then it creates also an impact for the fly fishermen that would come here and try to catch some of those fish. It creates an impact for the diving community because they don't want to come here and look at an exotic species. They want to come here and look at something that they would not otherwise find elsewhere. The industry overall provides 25% of GDP, so it tells you how important it is. It employs 1 in every 7 people. And so in terms of employment and in terms of overall contribution to the economy of Belize.
The lionfish caused quite a scare when it was first spotted in Belize, and the reason that this fish cannot be eradicated and is still a problem 10 years later is because it breeds rapidly. In 2015, as many as 10 lionfish per hectare were recorded in our waters. With their venomous spines and no natural predators in the region, it is impossible to remove the species from our waters. So in the last 5 years or so, Belize followed a regional strategy and engaged in a number of activities and campaigns to control this invasive fish. They found out that humans are really the best known predators for the lionfish. In 2015, 90,000 lionfish were culled. Lionfish tournaments and the legalization of the spearing of lionfish became a part of our tourism offerings.
Issue a permit for people that are scuba diving that can be able to spear only lionfish, because in Belizean laws, if you scuba dive, you cannot spear, you cannot catch anything. You're just scuba diving for recreational purposes. Special spear that we give permit is a trident. It has a 3-prong approach. So these are less likely to be able to kill other species rather than only lionfish. And because of its design as well, it minimizes the impact it can have on the ones that is spearing as well.
The decorative tail, bones, and fins are now used to make jewelry, giving locals an opportunity to earn an income. And when people found out lionfish weren't poisonous, restaurants started to put it on their menu. Tourists and locals now eat this fish. And since 2015, 9% of the restaurants in Belize now serve this tasty fish.
Nobody else served it at the time, so we decided to just go ahead with that since every other fish is available everywhere, and we're trying to get rid of the lionfish, and everybody was loving it, so we kept going with it. From customers, everybody loved the fish. It's very mild tasting. Everybody loved the idea of having the fish always available to eat. Being the only fish we serve, that's what everybody comes for, and everybody loves it.
But despite the successful rollout of these measures, Belize must stay on top of the lionfish. In the Bahamas, this fish has wiped out 79% of juveniles in just one area. And that's why today the Fisheries Department and its partners launched a plan that will ramp up some of these activities and see the installation of a working group to manage, monitor, and evaluate the species. This National Lionfish Management Plan 2019 to 2023 seeks to get the lionfish into one of the seafood processing facility by next year, as well as to increase the value of this fish by diversifying the product markets. Stakeholders also want to see a lionfish certification scheme by 2020, a registry of all lionfish tournaments by 2021, as well as control of this invasive fish within Belize's no-take zones the same year. Fisheries Administrator Beverly Wade explains.
Seeks to ensure at the end of the day that we keep lionfish populations at a threshold where it is not negatively impacting our natural ecosystems. Secondly, the plan also looks at the development of economic activities and to encourage the targeting of lionfish and encourage control activities of lionfish. And finally, the plan looks at having a framework in place which is collecting information that can now be fed into an adaptive management plan that allows us to be able to in an effective way, manage lionfish in Belize.
And so stakeholders believe that the way to control this fish and to reduce its impacts on our reef is to tap into its economic value.
We're really now looking at how can we have a fishery, so catching lionfish for economic return, which is providing economic and social benefits, and guide that fishery and the development of the market towards a yield, a catch rate that is effective in suppressing lionfish populations below its sort of ecological threshold that basically the level that the reef can sustain. So that's the long-term strategy really for lionfish control.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.